From the top floor of a building, a massive spool breaks loose. What follows is a vertical disaster racing down the shaft. Materials had been stored at the rooftop level, but without barriers in place, one heavy spool rolls off and drops straight through the open space. The spool breaks free, dropping through the open shaft. Each level it passes sends a thunderous echo through the structure before the impact below shakes the entire site. Never, ever store or leave heavy materials unsecured at the edge of an open shaft. Gravity will always win, and once a load begins to fall, no reaction time or protective instinct can stop it from reaching whatever lies below. A warehouse aisle stacked high with sacks becomes a silent threat waiting to collapse. Inside a storage facility, piles of heavy bagged goods are stacked well above head height, lining a narrow passage where workers move through with little clearance. One worker walks past the row, unaware that the stability of the load is already compromised. Without warning, the stacked bags shift and collapse, spilling across the narrow aisle in a sudden wave of weight and dust. The once stable passage turns into a blocked, unstable zone within seconds. Never ever stack goods beyond safe height limits without proper support. Tall, unsecured stacks may appear stable, but the weight and shifting forces can turn them into sudden avalanches, especially in narrow spaces where workers have no escape route. Proper racking, restraints, and load stability checks are the only way to prevent collapse. A quiet tire check, then a thunderclap. In a second, stored energy turns a routine walk-around into a blast zone. A fuel tanker sits on wet ground in a busy yard, rain spattering across its frame. One worker walks to the rear wheel set, crouching slightly as he leans in to inspect the tire. To the untrained eye, it's just rubber and steel. Ordinary routine, but inside that casing sits pressure, tightly packed, enough energy to rival a small blast. A truck tire at 90 to 120 pounds per square inch holds tens of thousands of pounds of stored force. If the casing is damaged, corroded, underinflated, and then reinflated, that energy can release violently. As the worker leans near the wheel group, the tire ruptures with a sudden blast of pressure. A sharp wave of air and vapor bursts outward, scattering tools and shaking the wet concrete. A split-second release of stored force. Never ever stand in the side blast zone of a pressurized truck tire. A tire is not just rubber, it's a vessel storing explosive energy. When weakened by heat, wear, or hidden damage, that vessel can rupture without warning. Keeping distance is not optional, it is survival. A scaffold frame lifted too high, and a hidden danger waited above. Outside a building, 3 workers moved a tall metal scaffold frame across the ground. The day looked ordinary, but their path ran dangerously close to overhead power lines, an invisible threat suspended in plain sight. As the frame tilted, its top section brushed the overhead line. Instantly, a bright flash marked the discharge, metal meeting live current. The crew steps back as the circuit breaker trips, ending the surge before it spreads. Never, ever move tall metallic structures near live overhead power lines. The only protection is prevention. Know the clearance. De-energize lines when work is required. And plan the movement of scaffolds or ladders with strict control. One careless tilt is all it takes for a deadly current to turn an ordinary task into disaster. In a quiet kitchen, a small flame flickers on a pan, and in seconds, that spark becomes something uncontrollable. It begins as a routine evening inside a commercial kitchen. Pans line the counters, utensils scattered from hours of work. Above the stove, oil left heating suddenly ignites, and flames rise along the wall. A worker notices the fire and rushes out, returning with another to help put it out. The second worker reacts quickly, but makes a fatal error in judgment. Grabbing water, she throws it toward the burning oil. The moment it hits the hot oil, the reaction is instant. Steam bursts upward, spreading the flames beyond the pan. In seconds, the fire races across the surface, filling the kitchen with heat and smoke. Never, ever use water to fight a grease or oil fire. When water hits burning oil, it doesn't extinguish it. It flashes into steam, blasting the flames and igniting oil droplets outward with explosive force. This reaction creates a fireball that spreads faster, climbs higher, and becomes nearly uncontrollable. The correct method is to cut off the heat, cover the pan with a metal lid, or use a Class K fire extinguisher designed for grease fires. On the workshop floor, one wrong method of moving sheet metal turned balance into danger. Inside a fabrication shop, several workers were moving large, curved sheet metal panels. These oversized pieces were being lifted and adjusted near a forming machine. One worker, instead of staying grounded, climbed onto the unstable surface of the sheet metal to maneuver it into position. As the sheet flexes under his weight, it tilts off balance. The sudden shift sends the panel sliding from its position, setting off a chain of unstable movement across the work area. Never ever climb on sheet metal or any unstable material surface during handling. Sheet metal is not designed to support body weight. It bends, slips, and can whip unexpectedly under pressure. Safe handling requires stable ground positions, proper lifting methods, and mechanical assistance where panels are too large or unwieldy for control by hand. On a busy construction site, one wrong step on a roof can send everything spiraling out of control. The day looks like any other. Scaffolding surrounds the building frame and workers move in rhythm below. But high above, in the top corner of the structure, one worker in red is balancing on a makeshift platform working across the roofline. There are no guardrails, no lifelines, just raw exposure to open air. As he shifts position, his footing slips on the sheet beneath him. The surface shifts, breaking his balance. Without guardrails or harness, there's nothing to stop his descent. A single misstep turns exposure into a fall hazard. Every elevated task demands respect. Never ever work at height without proper fall protection. A simple lifeline, safety harness, or secured platform could mean the difference between finishing the shift safely or never walking away at all. A quiet warehouse turns dangerous the moment a truck starts reversing in. Inside a busy loading dock, one worker bends low over a pile of boxes, completely focused on the task in front of them. Just behind, a large truck begins to reverse into the bay. Its rear lights glow red, but the noise of forklifts, crates, and chatter fills the space, masking the sound of danger rolling in. As the truck reverses, it edges closer into the loading area, unseen by the worker crouched behind the boxes. With no signal or spotter, the vehicle keeps moving until the space becomes critically unsafe. The hazard here is blind reversing. When drivers back trucks into cluttered bays without a clear spotter or protected zone, workers behind the vehicle are at extreme risk of being struck or pinned. Always assign a trained signaler when reversing in tight areas. One moment of miscommunication can turn a normal shift into a disaster. On a quiet street, one strike from an excavator unleashes a violent surge. It's a daytime excavation project, a crew working close to a pipeline corridor. The yellow excavator digs steadily, while 3 workers stand nearby, monitoring progress. Traffic passes just beyond the barricade. The soil looks dry and compact, but beneath it runs the main water supply line for the area, an unseen hazard waiting to erupt. The bucket strikes deeper than intended. A buried pipeline ruptures, releasing a sudden surge of water and soil. The flow spreads fast, flooding the trench and spilling across the street. Striking buried utilities during excavation is one of the most violent hazards on a job site. It can unleash water, gas, or electricity with destructive force in an instant. This flood was preventable. Always conduct proper utility locates and mark every line before digging. Without that step, one strike can turn routine excavation into disaster. At a bustling amusement park, the hum of rides and cheers of the crowd masked the silent danger building at the drop tower. The operator stationed at ground level worked just below the towering ride. Riders were strapped in, ready for the vertical thrill. But as the massive gondola descended with force, the operator was still standing in the restricted zone, dangerously close to the ride's path. In seconds, the gondola descends with immense force, sweeping through the ride's clearance zone, a powerful reminder of how unforgiving moving machinery can be when distance is ignored. Never, ever remain in the danger zone of a moving amusement ride. These rides are designed with strict clearance areas, and even a single step inside them puts operators at immediate risk. Proper positioning and adherence to ride operation protocols are the only lines of defense against the enormous force of moving attractions. Stay outside the drop path. Respect ride clear zones. Safety depends on distance. Don't forget to share what you learned today in the comments. Your insight could save a life. Take care.